Today, I'm gonna share with you guys the biggest reason that I think people actually filter water.
We're the Crawfords. We have 6 kids. In 2018, we set out to do the Appalachian Trail.
Bye!
A 2,200-mile hike from Georgia to Maine. It was hard, but 14 states and 161 days later, we finished it. Together.
Okay, so it is really nice out. I have been wanting to make this video ever since I was hiking the Appalachian Trail. I thought about it all the time, and I've put it off, and now it's finally time. There's gonna be people that are freaking out because they disagree with this and they think the answer is you should just filter water. To that I would say, just go away. If you've already made up your mind, don't even bother with this. But if you wanna think through this and possibly see another perspective for filtering water and the outdoors, keep on watching. So I'm kind of assuming, you guys, there's thousands of sites and blog posts and vlogs out there explaining to you the benefits and the pros for filtering water and the best ways to do it. This is not one of those episodes. I'm also not trying to change your mind. If you do this and if you're completely comfortable with that, I would say go for it. What I am trying to do is introduce a way to think about decisions in the outdoors that might be new to some of you guys. And this actually isn't just about the outdoors. And we're gonna share how we think about filtering water. Now, our experience through hiking the Appalachian Trail this last year is that about 99% of people that we saw filtered their water. Now, I'm gonna share a little story. When I first heard about the Appalachian Trail, I think it was 16 or 17 years ago, I got so excited that I went out and bought a backpack because I wanted to get into this thing called backpacking. I had never done any of that. No tent, no sleeping outside. So the first thing I did was I went to REI and I said, I want a backpack, what do I need to buy? And they showed me the right backpack. It was, of course, an 80 liter, which is crazy now. The right sleeping bag. They showed me I needed one of those little chair things, so I bought one of those. And then they showed me that I needed a water filter. And back then it was this MSR pump thing, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll buy it. About 2 years in, I was backpacking in Switzerland with my brother. And we're walking through the French Alps and walking along, and there's these like trough things where water come out. So I'm sitting there like filtering my water, and up walks this 80-year-old looking guy, and he just takes his water and he like sticks it in, and then he's like go 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 go, and then he like starts walking away. And I'm like, hey, excuse me. I'm like, do you ever filter this water? And he's like, son, I haven't filtered water in the last 70 years, and I've been hiking all over the world, and I've never gotten sick once. He said, I think once there was this mud puddle I was drinking out of, so I put a few drops of chlorine in it, but I've never had a problem. And it just like made me rethink everything that I had heard at REI, and I think it just gave me permission to not filter. So basically, ever since then, we have hiked without filtering water, and we've covered about 3,000 miles as a family. We currently have 6 kids, and our largest adventure, which we chronicled this last year, was hiking the full 2,200-mile Appalachian Trail together. And we did all of that without filtering water, I don't think once. We never used our filter. Now, I do want to say, because I know there's going to be some haters out there, yes, we did get sick. We got sick 3 times that I can think of, but those weren't related to the water. And the reason I know this is, one, we were actually sick as we were driving to the trail already. Rainier threw up in the car, my 2-year-old, on the way to the actual trailhead, and that sickness persisted for about 3 or 4 days. And then we got sick another time, and we were hiking with other people that were filtering water and people who were staying off trail in homes and weren't drinking trail water, and they've both got the same symptoms that we did. So to me, what that says is it had nothing to do with the water. Plus, like hiking with 6 kids in crowded areas and just doing anything for 5 months with a family, like people get sick, it just happens. When it comes to outdoor adventures, I don't believe in one-size-fits-all rules for how one should adventure. I do learn from how other people like to think, because to me, every decision in the outdoors, involves benefits and risk, or you can look at cost and risk. So you need to get really good at understanding those things, I think, if you really want to have fun in the outdoors. So when we're asking this about water filtration, I think it's really important to ask these questions. What is the risk and what is the cost? And it's pretty simple questions, but let's get into the risk. Now, the main risk that people think about is that you can get sick. And that seems really scary to a lot of people. So I want to ask this question: how bad is it if you get sick? Now, the main thing that people are concerned about is what's called giardia. Giardia is an intestinal infection marked by abdominal cramps, bloating, nausea, and bouts of watery diarrhea. Now, to clarify real quick, giardia is the actual parasite, and giardiasis is the infection that's caused by the parasite giardia. It's actually very common. You can get it all over America, not just in the wild or the woods, but actually in swimming pools and other water supplies. So basically you have like diarrhea for usually 3 days from what I hear from people who have got it. And you don't really need treatment. It says typical treatment can be slight, resolve without treatment, and last 2 to 6 weeks, although it can sometimes last longer and be more severe. Another thing to note is that 10% of the people that contract it don't even show symptoms. Now, how do you get giardia? The main way is from poop. And it's like animal poop, but I also found through studying the internet that the CDC says men who have sex with men, which I think is just another way of saying anal sex. So the idea is if animals are pooping, and if they're pooping near water sources and you drink the poopy water, then you're more likely to get giardia. So I read this on a popular Appalachian Trail internet forum, and the person said, given that the Sawyer Mini is now available, which is the most popular filter, is there really an excuse to risk not filtering your water? And this is like the common idea. It's just like a rule. It's just like, yeah, you always filter your water no matter what, no matter who you are. It's like the law. But like I said, these absolute rules aren't very helpful for me, and the way I think about it is the second question I ask, in addition to how bad is it, is what are the chances that I'm gonna get it? How likely is it that one gets giardia? Now, it's important to note, there is not much information out there on how common it is on the Appalachian Trail, you know, where it actually exists. Like, it's kind of a big mystery, so the only way they can really diagnose it is if you go to a doctor's office and they test your blood, I think is how they check, but they don't know. So I'm gonna share with you guys the way that I kind of evaluate this risk, and it's not perfect by any means. It's just kind of a template for thought and a little bit of math, and maybe you guys can apply your own, you know. It goes something like this. Now, coming across water sources in the Appalachian Trail, there's all different kinds. There's small ones, and there's big ones. I kind of guessed that the average water source pushes about 10 gallons a minute through. And that's just an estimation. There was ones that had a half gallon a minute. There were ones that had 1,000 gallons a minute, like huge water sources. And the first question I asked is, what are the chances there's an animal that craps upstream in the water within 1,000 yards? So you can't really ever gauge the answers to this, but if I was just to guess, just to toss out what I think is a conservative number, let's say 1 in 5 chance of streams where there's an animal that is crapped in the 1,000 yards in front. The next question I'm gonna ask is, what are the chances that that animal took a crap in the last hour? Okay, so for the poop to be present, it seems like that's a reasonable time. And I would say 1 in 10. And like I said, guys, I actually think these are conservative numbers. I would probably more with my gut go more in 1 in 100, but I'll show you guys what I'm gonna do with these numbers. The third question is, what are the chances that the animal crap actually got into my water? So you're looking at this 10 gallons flowing past every minute, and I stick my 16 ounce or 12 ounce water bottle in there and I fill it up. And so not only would the poop have to be 1,000 feet up in the last hour, but the actual particles go into my actual bottle. For that, I set a 1 in 25 chance to be conservative. The next question is, what are the chances that the animal itself was infected with giardia? Because Giardia only gets passed from animals that are actual carriers. And like I said, there's no actual information about this out there for how many animals are contagious. But just to be hyper conservative, I said, what if 1 out of every 2 animals has Giardia, and that's the animal that crapped, and that's the animal's crap that's in my bottle right now? So 1 out of 2. And then from there, what are the chances of me actually contacting giardiasis from the Giardia that's in the water? And once again, I gave myself a 1 out of 2 chance of doing that. So like I said, those are my numbers. They're conservative, but if that's true, do you guys remember how you like calculate fractions where it's like half of a half is 1/4, so you just multiply the numerator denominators, I believe. If you take all those denominators and multiply them, the number you end up with is a 1 in 5,000 chance of getting Giardia. So a lot of people are like, oh, what does that number mean? How do I deal with that number? The way I think about that is if I'm hiking for 161 days, and that was how long it took us to finish the Appalachian Trail, which was about average. And if I stop for water 3 times a day from 3 different streams, this gives us 483 times to get Giardia. Let's just round that up to 500. So there's 500 opportunities on the Appalachian Trail that we had to get Giardia. Well, what that means is, if I'm gonna get it 1 every 5,000 times, if I through hiked the Appalachian Trail 10 times, I would get Giardia once. Now, that's a bunch of what ifs, that's not a guarantee, but that's just a statistical template for looking at it. Once again, if you want to adapt the numbers, if you want to be more liberal or more conservative, plug it in, do whatever you want with the formula. So that's the risk, but that's only 1/2 of the equation. The other half of the equation is looking at the cost. The most obvious upfront cost is the money. Sawyer Squeeze, which is the main filter that people are using, we actually bought and carried 2 of them for a good portion of the trail, is 20 bucks. And most people, I think, go through 2 or 3 of these on the trail, so let's just say it costs the average person 40 bucks worth of filtration equipment. I actually think that the main factor is not money, it's time. So with these filters comes buying, cleaning, replacing, preventing freezing because people are sticking them in their sleeping bags, storing, pulling them in and out of your backpack, and reordering these things. So over the course of the entire Appalachian Trail, I estimate that people spend approximately 3 hours doing all those things with their filter. But to me, this is the much bigger one, and that is the actual time filtering the water. Now, from our observation watching people and interviewing quite a few people on the trail, the average person takes about 3 to 10 minutes per time to filter water. Now 3 is like not really realistic, but I just want to put it in there because I want to be generous with the numbers, and that's like the absolute lowest. And 10 minutes is like probably closer to average, I think. But for the sake of this discussion, let's take it at 4 minutes. Let's say you're pretty fast and you're doing bare minimum and you're taking 4 minutes to filter water each time. Now you're doing this 3 times a day. So that's 12 minutes a day you've spent filtering water. So that doesn't seem like much time, right? I mean, it's kind of like the guy asked before, like, well, what's the big deal? This is just an obvious no-brainer. But when you multiply 12 minutes times 161 days, what you get is 1,932 minutes. Now, that amounts to 32 hours worth of time on your entire Appalachian Trail hike spent on nothing but filtering water at a minimum. Now, if you add in the 3 hours of time spent with all the maintenance and stuff, you're up to 35 hours. At 36 hours, you're actually talking about a full day and a half. In my experience, I've been around a lot of companies, and that the way that they get you to act is by emphasizing the risk and minimizing the cost. If you guys have heard of Apple Care, that's the insurance that they sell you at the Apple store when you buy an iPhone. When you're buying an iPhone, you'll see that they'll emphasize really 2 types of stories. One is they'll say the story of, man, some guy just bought an iPhone and then he walked out and he broke it and he didn't have Apple Care and he felt like such an idiot. And they're kind of like looking at you like, you don't want to be that idiot. And they make it sound like Apple Care is just a no-brainer. And of course the other story they tell is the guy who like broke his phone 11 months in, but he had Apple Care And he was sure glad that he had it because now he's all taken care of. What they don't emphasize and what they don't tell you is about the 85 other people that bought it and never used it and everything just went fine. Because those stories, they don't really help Apple get to what they want to do, which is to sell you more AppleCare. And this is one of the things that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. When you look at the math, the chances of 1 in 5,000 and the amount of people that filter water every time and are really, in my opinion, possibly a little bit neurotic about it, meaning they have these rules like I will never drink unfiltered water, the amount of concern or risk to me is disproportionate to the amount of cost that it takes. And this was true in our story of hiking the Appalachian Trail because the #1 comment that we got on all of our videos that we published during the trail all had to do with people begging us and pleading us to please filter our water, which is really kind of funny considering the fact that we never got sick from our actual water. And remember I told you guys at the beginning that I was going to give you the actual reason why I think people filter water. That is because I think the biggest reason people filter water is because they don't want to feel like an idiot. When you operate outside of the herd mentality, and if you were to get sick and there's signs all over the place, people are going to look at you and just be like, geez, didn't you read the sign? You're kind of an idiot. And what I just want to pose as a bit of reminder for you guys is that oftentimes people give you advice because it benefits them, not because it's actually going to benefit you. And this could be in an actual commercial sense. Water filtration is a multi-million dollar business. But I think more often it's actually in a subconscious sense. Through some of the national parks, there was signs that said, remember, always filter the water. And I was wondering, like, why are these signs here? You know, we've been drinking the water and it's actually fine. It's like coming straight out of the ground. The risk of Giardia there was so small because there was no animals anywhere near. The government doesn't mind us wasting our time and money. Us spending $40 on a filter or spending 36 hours over the course of 5 months doesn't impact them. What impacts them is if I get sick and that headline makes the news and it says, man in Smoky Mountain gets Giardia from wild bear, or something like that. That's what frustrates them. So when they put a sign up, they're more doing it to protect their ass, not mine. Now, I'm not saying that people don't actually get sick or that they're not actually caring about people at all. I'm just saying, in terms of this being a complex equation, they're not really looking out for the cost and benefit of the individual. They're looking at the cost and benefit for themselves. So to translate that Apple story to the hiking community, the hikers who get Giardia are the loudest. And this is on the forums. There's stories of people getting it, people having diarrhea, and I'm sure it's hard and I'm sure it's terrible. And as you're out there, the stories are all over the place. People are filtering water and they say, well, I know a guy and he went to town for 3 days because he didn't filter his water, and everyone seems to know someone that's doing it. But I would just say as a rule of thumb, we don't always want to base our decisions on the stories that are the loudest. Because you never hear about the thousands of hikers that never get it and that are completely fine. Their stories aren't told because they're kind of like non-stories. I love hiking and I love backpacking and I love the outdoors. And one of the main reasons I do is because to me, it's all about evaluating risk. There's a lot of decisions out there. And I think in most of life, I've seen that there's always risk. There's always a bit of gambling. And the question isn't, are you gonna gamble? It's what are you gonna gamble with? So in this case, are you gonna gamble with your time or are you gonna gamble with your health? For us, we chose time. And one of the reasons, very simply, is that time was an actual cost. It's guaranteed. We're never gonna get it back. The risk is potential. It's just a maybe. So in general, I think it's a safer bet to go with the actual cost versus the potential risk. But I understand not everyone is gonna think about it the same way we do. And this is where I wanna just toss these tools out because I would like you guys to use your own value system and maybe use some of these questions and some of these formulas and some of these thoughts to assess yourself. Why do you backpack? What's your top values and your top priorities? If safety is your primary goal, then maybe treating water is your best option. But a lot of people do the AT not because their primary goal is safety, but their primary goal is adventure. And safety is one of those things that's like you have to kind of use as a tool along the way. So for those of you that want adventure, you might decide that sitting by a stream pumping water for 36 hours doesn't really help fuel your spirit of adventure. And there might be the element of, hey, maybe I'll get sick. Maybe the parasite will get me. I don't want to say that that could even be like exciting, but in a way, like that's what adventure is. Every time you're putting your water bottle in the stream, it feels a little bit more adventurous than turning on the tap or just pulling out the Pepsi. One of my favorite authors is Thoreau, and in Walden, he writes about the value of simplicity and how he learns about economy from building a cabin with basically his bare hands. And it was this simplicity with economy that allowed him to see issues for how they really were. And there was no distractions. And when I'm backpacking, I feel like I'm kind of the closest to that mindset that I can get, where every minute, every calorie, every ounce, and every step matters. Everything that's in your pack is like super important. And in some cases, every dollar matters. This is like why I think this issue is important. And I want to leave you guys with this question. If you don't carry and buy a filter and spend all this time filtering water, what else might you spend 36 hours on your thru hike doing? Resting, relaxing, journaling, calling friends, taking an extra 0 day in town, writing a book? I don't know. These are all things that I think we have the decision to make with our time. And I just hope that this becomes a conversation starter, people who don't see filtration as just this necessary thing that you have to do, that you just don't think about just because it bleeds a little bit of time every time. And we can start to say, how can we best spend our time? There is no one size fits all. Everyone's hiking for different reasons. There's no one definition of safety, fun, or risk, as long as it's not impeding others. So hike your own hike, and I hope this video helps you guys in thinking through and enjoying your hike better. Ugh, I really don't like these kinds of videos. Let me know if you want me to make more of them in the comments, and I'm still probably not gonna do it anyways.